what's going on because the host, okay. Hello and welcome to Journeys from Ethiopia and Daliat-El Carmel to Canada, brought to you by Canadian Associates, by Ben-Gurion University, Canada, also known as BGU Canada, and the Canadian branch of the International Federation of the Israel Medical Association, also known as CIMA. My name is Daliat Solomon, and I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications with BGU Canada, and it's my pleasure to be your host and moderator for tonight's event. We are truly fortunate to have two amazing speakers with us this evening. Both are Israeli medical fellows at Mount Sinai Hospital in Toronto through an innovative partnership with the Israeli Ministry of Health. One of them is, in fact, also a proud graduate of Ben-Gurion University's medical school. Dr. Maru Gete and Dr. Nana Maklada will be sharing their personal stories of overcoming adversity, racism, and many other challenges on their journeys to becoming the incredible physicians that they are today. Before I officially introduce our speakers, I would like to turn the screen over to Mark Mendelson, CEO of BGU Canada, for greetings on behalf of the organization. Mark?
Thank you, Galit. Good evening to all. Good evening to all our friends who've joined us. And I had originally written this fine, almost spring-like night, as I look out of my window and see the rain cascading down off my windows, I say, not yet. I am Mark Mendelson, Chief Executive Officer of Ben-Gurion University, Canada, and I welcome you all to what should prove to be a fascinating program. Welcome to our two most accomplished medical professionals, Drs. Maru Gete and Nana Maklada. How thrilling to note that Dr. Gete is a BGU graduate. Both, as Galit had said, are also Israeli Foundation Fellows, having received scholarship and research grants from the Israeli Foundation, one of Ben-Gurion University's and most important supporters of research in autism, Jewish thought, and one of Canada's greatest philanthropic group. I am also thrilled to let everyone know that at our last annual general meeting held exactly 1 week ago today, we announced another huge record-breaking year of donations received for research and growth at Ben-Gurion University, Israel's youngest university in the Negev. We truly are the little engine that could, and we certainly have accomplished miracles in Canada during the past 2 COVID years, as well as the past decade. And this is the second time we are co-hosting a webinar with our friends at the Canadian branch of the International Federation of the Israel Medical Association. Last year, the hot topic was, of course, COVID, but this year, these two brilliant Israeli doctors will tell us about their work in Toronto's hospitals and how they had to overcome obstacles along the way. Thank you all for joining us, and please visit our website at www.bengurion.ca to learn about the other outstanding and out-of-the-box research which is being carried out at Ben-Gurion University. Many thanks to Executive Director Shimi Wenner, Director of Marketing and Communications Galit Solomon, both from Ben-Gurion, and Dr. Rose Geist and Dr. Daphne Grossman from the Israel Medical Association. Toda Rabba. I just want to say one postscript is that unfortunately there was another terrorist shooting today in Tel Aviv, in the center of Tel Aviv, actually 1.5 blocks away from where my son lives, and a short hop, skip, and jump away from where Shimi Wenner's daughter is spending a year. She was on her way to exactly that area. 2 people have been murdered. 4 people are on life support, and they are right now in Dr. Maklada's hospital, Ichilov, and there are another 9 who are recovering and expect to recover. So we wish them all a refuah shlema, a speedy recovery, and of course, our deepest sympathies to the families. Thank you very much, and enjoy the evening. Galit, the screen is all yours.
Thanks for that, Mark. As you might know, both BGU Canada and CIMA have a stake in the medical field, as Mark mentioned, and it feels natural for us to collaborate once again on bringing you, the audience, another compelling joint webinar as we did last year. And so on that note, I would like to welcome Dr. Rose Geist, the president of the CIMA. Dr. Geist, the screen is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Galit. Just a word about the Canadian branch of the International Federation of the IMA. This organization was actually founded in 1945 by a group of Canadian physicians whose aim at that time was to create relationships and to provide a bridge and support between the Canadian and the Israelis' medical communities. Since then, however, as we all know, there's been an unbelievable growth in Israeli medicine and in medicine in general, including the advances in technology, which facilitates our wonderful international communication. Today, our interests continue to be primarily in supporting education, mainly focused on medical students and residents who wish to study in Israel, but also on educational events and webinars, such as the one you will hear this evening. But I'd like to thank Shimi Wenner and the BGU, who've been outstanding partners for us and who are so skilled in bringing these events to the community. So on behalf of the executive of the CIMA, which is Dr. Daphne Grossman, Matthew Grossman, Dr. Difat Yakubovich, Ms. Bonita Joss, and Dr. Roger Goldstein, we all invite you to join us in the CIMA as we continue to build relationships and provide educational events. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Dr. Geist, for your remarks. And before I introduce our first speaker for tonight, I would like to let you know about the format for this evening. I will introduce each of our presenters just before they share a 10 to 15-minute presentation. Once our second speaker wraps up his presentation, we will move on to a discussion and an audience Q&A section. Please remember to use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we will do our very best to get to as many questions as possible this evening. Time now to introduce our first speaker. Dr. Nana Maklada is an emergency medicine specialist working at Tel Aviv's Ihalov Medical Center. She is currently in Toronto on an emergency medicine fellowship at Mount Sinai Hospital. Dr. Maklada grew up in Daliat-El Carmel, a Druze village on Mount Carmel in northern Israel. The Druze community is one of the ethnic minorities in Israel and is known to be very seclusive. Being a woman from the Druze community has presented unique experiences, especially in Dr. Maklada's journey to becoming a physician, where at the age of 18, she traveled alone to Moldova to study medicine. Dr. Maklada, it's our pleasure to have you with us tonight, and the screen is yours.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. Thank you, Galit, for the wonderful introduction. I would like to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to present my story. I truly appreciate it. So you can see the first photo. This is me and the hospital I work in, Tel Aviv Sourasky Medical Center. So I have been working there since 2015, first as an intern and then as a resident. And after completing my residency, I continued working there as a senior physician in our Emerge. And then you can see the second photo, where is our trauma bay. One moment. Just, okay, great. So given the fact that Israeli emergency medicine is still developing as a field, and in many departments, the emergency physician does not play the generalist role, so I decided to engage the Mount Sinai Fellowship to experience the North American style in emergency medicine, and hoping one day I can bring these new aspects back to my country, Israel, and helping to promote our emergency medicine field together with the new generation of the residents and physicians. So you can see the photo, next one, for the Mount Sinai. Okay, and then next photo, this is my village. Shimi, you can also show the second photo of my village. Okay, so I grew up in a village called Daliat-El Carmel. It's a Druze village located on Mount Carmel at north of Israel, very close to Haifa city, and its population around 20,000, in which the majority of residents are Druze, 97%. Okay, so we can pass to the other photo. Yep, for is hungry. So here in this photo, you can see actually the entrance to my village. It's written in Hebrew words, and it means welcome to Daliat-El Carmel. And you also, you can notice there the grapes, right? And the grapes leaves. So actually, this is the story behind the name of my village. So Dalia means the grape leaves, and Carmel refers to the mountain Carmel where the village located. Now, I know what you are thinking about, and the answer is no. We don't make or produce wine. We don't drink alcohol or deal with, but we prepare very tasty and traditional food that you can see it in the photo. It's called in Hebrew, ale gefen. Okay, so now next photo, a schedule. It's just a brief and important facts about the Druze. So the Druze is one of the religious and ethnic minorities in Israel, numbering about 143,000. And as you can see in the schedule worldwide, there are probably about 2 million Druze living mainly in the Middle East, in Syria and Lebanon, with 30,000 in Jordan, and several thousands who immigrated to Europe and North and South America. And see the surprising fact, in Canada, there is around 25,000 Druze, which also was surprising for me. Okay. So the Druze in Israel are spread through different villages in the country, and there are about 16 villages in which located on high mountains. And you can see the photo now. So the reason behind this was our paramount Druze emir of Mount Lebanon. So years ago, back to the 17th century, he looked especially for high mountains to protect us from enemies. And he thought that if we are located in high mountains, so we have time to prepare till the enemy will reach us. Okay, and a little bit about the Druze community in Israel. The Druze community in Israel has a special standing among the country's minority groups, and the community have attained high-level positions in politics, public, and military. You can see in the next photo. Actually, they are fully integrated in the society. And in addition, our community in Israel is officially recognized as a separate religious entity with its own courts and spiritual leadership, which you can see in the same photo. And now we can pass to the next photo where you can see Israeli Druze soldiers. Okay, so now I will speak important facts about our faith. So the faith is Unitarian. We believe in one God. The Druze is only someone born to two Druze parents. Both parents must be a Druze. And we consider Jethro the Median our spiritual founder and prophet. You can see in the next photo. And what is unique, one moment. No, this is here, the flag, our symbol I will talk about. And then it should be also a photo for Jethro the Median temple. Okay. Okay, so yeah, maybe in the next slide. So what is unique about us is we believe in reincarnation. So that's mean once a Druze person dies, his soul immediately migrates to a Druze newborn. And important to mention, it's a human to human, Druze to Druze, male to male, and female to female. And it's impossible for the soul to exist without the body. So we are secretive, as Galit said. Little is known to the public about our faith, and only the very religious can participate fully in the religious services and gave access to our secret teaching of our scriptures, which known in Arabic hikmah and in English is epistle of wisdom. Our prayer house called khalwa, not the khalwa that we eat, and we are closed. That means our faith are not open to new followers since almost from the very beginning of our faith. So we don't permit conversion to our faith. but also we don't permit conversion from our faith. And then the last one, you can see our religious symbol, which now in the slide, which can be flag or star, which contains 5 colors and reflects actually 5 principles that we believe in. Okay, you can pass to the next slide. This is here the Druze women with the traditional dress, and then you can see the Druze men. Yep. Okay. So now a funny joke, every time when people ask me about my religion, I say I'm Druze. So then they look at me, what, a Druze? We never heard about that. And then I say, okay, do you know Amal Clooney, which you can see in the slide, George Clooney's wife? And they always answer, yes, sure, we know Amal Clooney. So I say, okay, no, now know that Amal Clooney is a Druze. So now the word Druze become more familiar to them. So it's easy way to remember. Okay, now the important part, according to the Israeli Druze women challenges in Israel and the whole world, but especially in Israel. So being a Druze, being a female Druze was never easy for me and for many women. It contains many challenges because we live in conservative culture with many strict rules. Druze women in the local culture are expected to behave in a traditional manner, to live in a Druze village, to marry Druze men, to rear children, and to be the whole day cooking and doing family like home tasks and behave modestly. And if they step outside the line, they can be censured and in extreme cases, even violence and death. And this phenomenon, unfortunately, what is known a violation of family honor, or what is called also honor killing, which still exists till our days. And know that the Druze females are expected to be married by the age of 21 years. So most Druze women, let's say older than 50, didn't study past their early teens, and they never worked outside the home and didn't leave the village of their own. And only during the last 2 decades, it has become a standard for young Druze women to attend university, to drive to work, and to abandon the traditional dress. But still, till our days, till today, to study alone outside the country is an issue, like what happened to me. Later, I will tell you. So there is nothing, just to mention that there is nothing in the Druze religious text that says women shouldn't work. But for years, the Druze religious leadership told women they shouldn't study or go out of their villages, and the women needed to be at home. This was a method of control and a way to try to preserve traditions. So, but that began changing, as I told you, in the 1990s, as more women went out of the village to work and to study. And since that time, a significant number of Druze women were educated, which is the happy part. So after what I told you, right, it's interesting how I went to study out of my country, and the secret behind that is my lovely family that you can see now in the next photo. So in the front, my lovely sisters, and then my parents. So a little bit about my mom, my superhero, and her story you can see in the next photo. So my mom grew up with 14 brothers and sisters, 11 brothers and 3 sisters. She was very smart at school, and her dream was to graduate and to continue studying. However, when she was at 10th grade, my grandfather forbade her from going to school. He wanted her to help my grandma with home daily tasks because my aunt get married, and now no one can help my grandmother except of her. So one day she went to school in secret without telling my grandpa, and when he figured out, he broke her nose. So since that moment, my mom had one wish and one dream. So the wish was to have only daughters when she will get married. And her dream was to have the opportunity to educate us and to support us, me and my sisters, in our career, to have educational degrees and certificates before any marriage. So because of that, she is a real fighter and my superhero. So my journey started at age of 18. So one day I saw a public notice in a Druze local newspaper in which invite Druze teens to study general medicine at the University of Minsk at Belarus. You can see the next slide. And at that time, our mayor signed a partnership agreement with the University of Belarus, and the aim was to promote the Druze community education. I was so excited. I had full support from my parents, and we translated whole documents into Russian. You can see the book there, which I bought to study Russian language, self-teaching. So to make the story short, later on, my application has been rejected by the mayor, and he said he refused to take responsibility on a Druze female to travel outside the country, and it is something unusual, and it's something, it is not appropriate for a female Druze to travel by herself. So in the next photo, this is what I said. Every cloud has a silver lining. So it's a way to express encouragement and optimism when there is a delay. And it means every delay may bring about a benefit. So the person affected, in this case, it's me, so should therefore not feel too upset or down. Now, at the same year, after the rejection I had from our mayor of the village, I ended up studying in Moldova, which can you see, in the map. And I remember myself searching for medical universities, and Moldova was one from the many universities. So at that time, I didn't have any doctors in my family to consult with, but I knew I have very lovely and supportive family that trust me and will do everything for me and for my future. So I had very good luck, and in 1 week, everything were arranged, and I arrived 7 days before the beginning of the first year of study. Now, important thing to tell you, to share with you, that when the decision to study in Moldova was made, my parents had the biggest challenge, and they had to fight and to face everyone who was against the idea, because I told you to study outside of the country is an issue still there. So the main question people and relatives were asking my parents, how you let her travel alone by herself, without a brother, without a husband, or without a male cousin? Because the community thinks it's a way of protection to have a male beside me, and because they think if I will go outside the country, I will be exposed and influenced by bad things, and by that I will bring shame to my community. But thanks God, my parents were real fighters. In the next slide, you will see my USMF University, which I graduated in 2014, and then I came back to Israel. After the graduation, I passed the Israeli medical exam, and later on, the Tel Aviv Sourasky Medical Center became my second home. At the end, the last photo, I say yes to my parents, and I say to my mom, your wish and your dream came true, and I always thank you for your dream. And last word, I thank my family now and my partner Naim, which they are watching me now from Israel, and the time there is 2:30 a.m. So really appreciate it, and thank you.
That's fantastic, Nana. Thank you so much for sharing, and clearly that's true love. Your partner staying up until the wee hours of the night or early hours of the morning to watch you. That was really fantastic. And of course, you'll be returning for the Q&A section of our discussion. But first, I would like to introduce our next speaker. Dr. Maru Gete was born in a small village in Ethiopia. He made Aliyah to Israel in 1991 at the age of 9, where for the first time he attended a school. Dr. Gete graduated from medical school at Ben-Gurion University of the Negev. His area of specialty is head and neck surgery, and he completed his residency at Shaarei Tzedek Medical Center in Jerusalem. Dr. Gete is on a 2-year fellowship program at Mount Sinai Hospital, specializing in head and neck oncology, sinus and skull-based surgery. Dr. Gete, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and the screen is yours.
Hi, Shalom. Can you see my slides?
We can see them. Yes, thank you.
So Shalom and good evening. Thank you, Galit, for the nice introduction. So I have 15 minutes, and in this 15 minutes, I would like to tell you about my personal story and about thousands of years history of the Ethiopian Jewish community and their journey to Israel. So as Galit mentioned, I made Aliyah to Israel in the age of 9. But before that, this is how my life in small village named Macha in northern Ethiopia used to look like. You can see here, this is a typical Jewish village. And in my village in Macha, we didn't have running water, no electricity, and I didn't even go to school. In 2011, together with other of my family members, we decided to go back to Ethiopia and return to visit the village. And even in 2011, there was no any transportation to get to our village, and we had to walk about 45 minutes in order to get to our village. In my village, our parents, they worked as a farmer, and here we can see the fields where my parents used to work, and here we can see our house that used to be. Children that were raised in my village and also in this part of Ethiopia, they were expected to work and contribute to the family just like adults. Starting from the age of 7, just like those children in the picture, as you can see here and here, I used to go to the fields and be a shepherd. My big responsibility actually was to make sure that the number of cattle that I took in the early morning will be back in the same number also in the evening. Another picture that I would like to show, this is the house that I showed you previously, and this is how it looked like. You can see here that the houses are made of wood and mud. And here standing, you can see here my father and my brother. And next to them in the middle, we can see here the local people who are now living in our previous house. And we can see here the differences between the local people who stayed in Ethiopia compared to, let's say, my father. So in summarize, we are talking about way of life back there in this little village, of a very simple way of life without any technology. And from that, this is in general my village, but to try to understand is to understand the general history of the Ethiopian Jews. So for centuries, the Ethiopian Jews who lived in Ethiopia, they made a lot of efforts in order to keep their Jewish identity different from the rest of the Christian society in Ethiopia. And this is the reason why a lot of Jewish communities choose in purpose in the beginning to go and live in mountains far away from big cities, because they wanted really to keep their identity. In Ethiopia, we called ourselves Beta Israel, meaning Bet Israel. And interesting, the non-Jewish in Ethiopia, they called us Falasha. And in Amharic, this is the Ethiopian language, Falasha means someone who is stranger, someone who is not belong to here, someone who is not belong to Ethiopia. And in the long exile in Ethiopia, our spiritual leaders, which we call them Kesim, similar to rabbis, let's say here, those are the people who kept our community united and enable us for 1,000 years to keep our identity. In Ethiopia, something interesting was that 100% of the community were religious, meaning being a Jewish in Ethiopia was also being religious. So this is something that comes together. Another one, because there was a big separation between the Jewish community in Ethiopia and the Jewish of the rest of the world, we know that Beta Israel did not regret themselves as the lost Jewish tribe, but saw themselves as the only part of Israel that ever survived. So the next step is to try to understand what was the connection between Beta Israel, our community, and let's say the European Jews. So as I mentioned before, for centuries, there was no connection between the Jewish of Ethiopia and other Jews around the world. And only rumors would exist about some forgotten Jewish tribe that exists in Ethiopia. And only in 1867, Professor Joseph Alevi, he was sent by Jewish organization from Europe in order to go to Ethiopia and to look after the forgotten tribe. In his journey, he wrote a diary, and he wrote in his diary that in Ethiopia, when he arrived after a long journey to Jewish village, he met some people, and then he told them that he was Jewish just like them. And interestingly, the reaction of the Ethiopian Jews who met them was with a big surprise, because for them, it was very hard for them to accept the concept of Jewish who look like white and not Ethiopian just like them. It's get to this level where there was no any connection between the two societies. Another topic that I would like to talk is about the efforts that the Ethiopian Jews community made in order to come to Israel. So the first attempt was conducted by Abba Mahari. Abba Mahari was Kes, meaning rabbi, and he was a well-known spiritual leader in our community. He was for many years the chief rabbi of the rabbis, and after 14 years of being rabbi, he came to his community and he told them, and I'm talking about 1862, he told to his people that the time to go back to Israel is arrived and the exile must be ended. So in 1862, he gathered a lot of people and he made a journey from north Ethiopia toward Jerusalem. They walked something like a month and they encountered a river that they were not able to cross. Eventually, unfortunately, he didn't succeed to arrive to Jerusalem, to Israel, but he kept the hope to return to Israel one day. After the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948, we as a community, we wanted to join the State of Israel, but following a rabbinic debate whether or not the Beta Israel were Jewish, it took time. Just to explain to you, the debate was because the development of the Jewish law in the development of the Jewish law in Ethiopian tradition was a bit different than the rest of the Jewish community around the world. So because of that, the question whether they are real Jewish or not was on the table. Just to tell you, in my perspective, this is a weird debate because we are talking about a Jewish community that kept the tradition with tremendous effort for centuries. And only in 1973, decision was made by the chief rabbi in those days, Rav Ovadia Yosef, when he declared that the Beta Israel were Jews and that the Israeli law of return was applying also in Beta Israel. And this is the process that started again the big, massive efforts to return to Israel. So the first big efforts took place in the 80s. And the first operation, it called Operation Moses. Back then, in the 80s, in Ethiopia, the regime didn't let people leave Ethiopia. And the only way that was open between to go to Israel was through Sudan. So what's happened is that thousands of Ethiopian Jews went on dangerous journey by foot through the desert of Ethiopia and Sudan. The principle was that they were hiding during the day and walking through during the night because the regime, as I mentioned, didn't let people leave. They were braving starvation, dehydration, and attack by brutal militants. The hope was to reach the Sudanese refugee camp, and they met with Israeli officials and be airlifted to Israel, and by that, to fulfill the dream of generation and to return to Israel. We are talking about that the journey to Sudan was succeed for more than 8,000 people, and by through the journey to Sudan, 8,000 people were able to come to Israel. But unfortunately, we are talking about that in this dangerous journey, around more than 3,000 Ethiopian Jews died along the way, starting from the journey itself that was dangerous, and because of the diseases and malnutrition in the Sudanese refugee camp, where the conditions were poor. And the second effort was conducted in 1991 and named Operation Salmon, where more than 14,000 people were airlifted to Israel in special operation in 36 hours and 35 non-stop flights. So my personal story gets in that in February of 1991, my family and I finally landed in Israel. And dream of generation was finally fulfilled. It was like a huge excitement, but also with the understanding that our life will be different from now. Another personal things that I want to share that during the journey to Israel, my family even lost my older brother, who went a few years before us. He died in Sudan. From malaria. So our first day in Israel, we got those devastating news. So in our first in Israel, with the joy of being in Israel and fulfilling the dream of regeneration, we also understand what was the sacrifice that we have to make in order to be in Israel. So this is how I remember my first day in Israel in the age of 9. From that, we were sent to observation center, what's called Merkaz Klita. And for the first time, was the time I went to school and started in Ulpan. In Ethiopia, my father, he was a traditional healer. So in our house, all the time, people came to ask for help. So when I had the opportunity to get education in Israel, the only thing that I wanted to become is to become like my father and become a physician. And after serving in the Israeli Defense Forces for almost 5 years, I went to medical school. I was accepted to medical school at Ben-Gurion University in the Negev and graduated from there. And after that, I conducted a residency at Daliat-El Medical Center in Jerusalem, And nowadays, thanks to the program run by the Israeli Ministry of Health in Mount Sinai, and led by Dr. Chaim Bell and Dr. Howard Ovans, an Israeli foundation, I'm in fellowship program at Mount Sinai Hospital in the area of head and neck oncology, rhinology, and skull-based surgeries. But last but not least, this is my dear family, my wife Shaked here, and we have 6 lovely kids. And Shaked is doing her postdoctoral fellowship in Women's College Hospital, and we're having a great time here in Toronto. Thank you very much.
Okay, wonderful. Start my video here. That was fantastic. Great to learn so much that, you know, maybe we didn't know as much about the history. And I have to say, on a personal note, my family is from India, and it's a very similar story with some of the adversity that the community went through when it came to recognizing Ethiopian Jews as Jews. Indian Jews went through similar experiences. I just saw Dr. Maklada on the screen a moment ago. I'm not sure whether she'll be able to join us, because I know she's having some technical difficulties. But in the meantime, while we wait, I just want to remind the audience, if you do have questions that you would like to share, please use the Q&A box at the very bottom of your screen, and share those questions, and I'll be sure to moderate them. Okay, very good. And Dr. Maklada is with us now, so we will get started on some questions. And this first question, actually, I would like to pose to both of you. You're both doctors now, and it was wonderful to hear about your journeys from childhood, you know, through some adversity, you know, and examples of potential racism and so on, to be able to rise above all of these challenges and be in extremely competitive environments like you're in, not just competitive, but challenging as well as doctors. We heard why you chose the profession. For both of you, it seems like there was parental inspiration that was a part of it. But why specifically your specific area of interest in medicine? Dr. Maklada, maybe I can begin with you, and then we can hear from Dr. Gete as well.
So sorry, can you repeat the question?
Of course, yeah. So why did you choose the specific, you know, your area of specialty in the field of medicine? Was there something in particular that interested you in that area? And perhaps you can also tell us a little bit about your area.
So difficult to explain a little bit. I just like that. I mean, I always wanted to be a medical doctor, and later on, while I'm doing my internship in the Tel Aviv Sourasky Medical Center, and I have 2 electives in gynae, OBGYN, but then I said, no way, like I like to control everything, and I like this adrenaline, like in the emergency. So I just went there, and till today, like I'm satisfied of what I'm doing. But to tell you why, actually, it's difficult. I mean, I just wanted that.
Yeah, because I would assume there are so many, obviously, areas of study within medicine itself. Dr. Gete, why did you choose your area of specialty?
Actually, I think the first question every medical student asks himself, I think it's whether he wants to be in the world of clinician or he wants to be a surgeon. And I was in the side who wants to be a surgeon, you know, to cut. And
Right.
I think the area of head and neck, and the area, as we call them, above the claviculas and the brain, this is the area that has so many interesting parts. It means the surgeries, the sophisticated equipment that involved with that, starts from a very tiny surgeries in the ear, in the ossicles of the ear, till big surgeries in oncology, let's say, that involve reconstruction with other parts of the body. This is like a huge area that was really interesting me. This is, and also in our family, actually, we had a story that was for a long time and talks about, and my father used to tell me that back and forth. And it's about when I was a little baby in my village in Macha in Ethiopia, I had a very bad ear infection and nothing could help me said something like for 3 days, I didn't stop crying and story like that. And this is a story that all the time hear and about how they were frustrated. And finally they got some solution, but I think this story is, I don't know, started maybe everything.
Right, it might have begun that early, and it's funny because your move to Israel happened when you were 9 years old, and for Dr. Maklada, your interest in medicine, you said, began at the age of 18. Still very young ages to sort of think about this. When you put yourself back in the shoes of a 9-year-old or an 18-year-old, could you have imagined your life unfolding as it has? When it comes to going into medicine? Maybe we'll start with Dr. Gete, since we have you on the screen.
So, in the age of 9, starting, I will say from the beginning, from, I don't know, 0.0 and start learning new language. I think that something that was in my family and said again and again, my father saying that education, this is the tool to do everything and you can be whatever you want. It's not, there is no different whether you are from Ethiopia, you are from any other place. What you have in your head will change your perspective in your life. I think this is what gave me, the motivation to work hard in order, I think, to accomplish a lot of things. And as a lot of physicians aware of that, being a physician, this is something that works so much. So this was, even though it's hard work, you can ask my wife and my kids that all the time complain that I am not at home, but eventually I think this is the best career.
Right. Got it. You know what? We've got quite a few questions already lined up. So I'll begin with a question that's addressed to Dr. Maklada. It comes to us from Marsha Cooper. And the question is, was there an option for you to study medicine in Israel? And would that have been more acceptable within your community?
So yes. So you will hear two voices, unfortunately, because
we're just having some
I just
technical.
have 2 links in between. So sorry for that. So let's say to study inside the country is not issue, but only outside, like to be alone without brother, without male. This will be a challenge and not acceptable till today. But actually, I didn't really try to study in Israel. I always look to study, I don't know why, like outside the country, maybe because I had challenges in my religion and in my community, and I wanted just something new, something far from this community. And I came back with 2 new languages, with a new culture. I mean, it's always an advantage, like to go to study outside the country for me, because you will be exposed to different language, different people and culture. If I will stay in Israel, I will stay with the same thinking of my religion, which is, as I told you, it's difficult a little bit.
Yeah, I guess part of it is also about, broadening your horizon in many ways, right? Getting an opportunity to live in a completely different culture
Right.
all of a sudden. A question now for Dr. Gete from Keith Maloff, and the question is, I guess this one can actually be addressed to both of you, but we'll start with Dr. Gete. Who are you working with at Mount Sinai in Toronto, and what kind of projects are you working on?
So my supervisor here at Mount Sinai It's Dr. Ian Witherick, I'm doing the fellowship in two big area in head and neck oncology and skull-based and rhinology and skull-based surgeries, and also involved in a research project regarding thyroid surgeries and especially head and neck cancers. And actually, you remind before the COVID, so we're establishing olfactory clinic that examine the ability of people to smell, and a lot of job now because of the COVID.
Right, right. Will this be picked up on this project now that we're settling a little bit into COVID?
No, it's still full time.
Right.
Yeah.
And Dr. Maklada, if you can tell us
so
about your experience at Mount
so
Sinai.
here I'm working as emergency fellow at the Mount Sinai in the emergency department. My supervisors are Dr. Nadia Primiani and Dr. Sean Lacombe, pretty famous, and all the program of the fellowship supported by the Sinai Health together with the Ministry of Health in Israel. So my program actually is 2 years of fellowship. First year just to have practice in different emergencies, because as I told you, it's a quite different system from what we have in Israel. And second year, it will be more specific for something that I'm interested in. So it will be, let's say, nerve blocks and orthopedic, so I can bring this back to Israel.
Wonderful, wonderful. Dr. Gete, you have a connection, obviously, to Ben-Gurion University of the Negev. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, obviously, my medical school was in Ben-Gurion University. We spent 8 years in Beersheba, in the Negev. Those are wonderful times being in this incredible medical school, because I think the approach and the way medicine is learned in the Ben-Gurion University, I think it's pretty different compared to the other universities. You used to joke about that there is what called Ruach Beersheba. It's in the spirit of Ben-Gurion University, and I think maybe Nana can comment on that, but it's well known that the Ben-Gurion University has some special, especially regard to community medicine, also emphasized during medical school. So from the second year of our medical studies, when we just starting to learn anatomy, we already had some connection with the patient that I think really builds something different in your future career. So I have like big place for Ben-Gurion University.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear. We also have a question now from Dina Livman, who, by the way, is with the Israeli Foundation, and she says you are both pioneers. Do you see yourselves as role models within your respective communities? And if so, can you comment on what you do to take on that responsibility?
What I do, so I will tell you the truth. After I was graduated and I start my internship at the Tel Aviv Sourasky Medical Center. So I'm living there, and I didn't go back to my village to live there. So actually, like, my role as Israeli Druze in the community, I don't have no role actually. Maybe you will see other Druze women will participate in many things, like many meetings, but I always send my mom instead of me. And then I just, this is the pathway that I, like, decided to myself, just to be far. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for my promotion. So I have my, let's say, my support from my family, my parents and my sisters. and that's it. I mean,
Wow.
yeah.
It is major, I guess, right? When you've grown up within a certain community and that's all you know, and to all of a sudden break out, very courageous in many ways as well. How does it feel? Do you sometimes feel isolated at all, having you know, not having that same connection to the community, but still having it obviously within your family?
So it's a good thing when I'm at the hospital, like working, and they recognize I'm Druze, like they see usually Russian-like, but speaking Arabic. So it's the Druze combination. So it's good. Let's say I don't have racism on all the stuff, but like usually people, you are Druze, like we have respect to the Druze people, the Druze community. And other than that, I will not really define myself, you know, that I'm Druze, because we should respect all people. We are all equal. Doesn't matter. I will, I will treat every patient, doesn't matter from which religion he is. But according to your question, like if I feel isolated, actually no, because I don't know the reason, but it was also, I didn't feel the isolation when I was in Europe, in Moldova. And when I came back, I feel so comfortable, like this is my community in Tel Aviv, because we have already common base, I think. So not isolated, for your question.
Okay, very
Yeah.
good. Thank you. Dr. Gete, a question for you here. As we mentioned in the biography before, when I introduced you, you arrived in Israel at the age of 9. That was also the first time that you attended school, based on the biography. This question comes from an anonymous attendee who asks, how did you manage going to school in Hebrew when you first came to Israel? And was it a culture shock having running water and a toilet inside the house?
First of all, yes, this is the simple answer for that. But I think as a child in this age, you have a lot of capability to adjust to the situation. And I remember myself I think in my first year in Israel, sitting in the class, and the only thing that I was aware of that when the ring is bell, it means you can go out for break, and when it's ring again, you go back to the class. But about that, what is more interesting, I think, it's how our father's generation deal with culture changes, because there is when someone who is more older coming to new culture, it's make a lot of difficulty as a new immigrant. And if I call a bit on your previous question, I think that my generation that came from Ethiopia, they are basically the pioneers. They are the new people who are opening gates of and completing gaps that exist. I mean, in my medical school, I was the only Ethiopian in the, I think, 5 years of medical school that was. I think there was another one, and like 5 years there was no anyone.
Wow.
And the same thing also when I started my fellowship, there was no anyone in Ol Shaarei Tzedek hospital, that is a pretty big hospital, that was from Ethiopia. So we have a lot of things to do about that. Another thing that in opposite to Nana, I think when I'm entering any class or something, all people can mention that I'm different. And we are doing a lot of I think work, and as many as physicians, lawyers, and high-level people will be involved in the Israeli society and be assimilated. I think that the assumptions and the prejudice that exist in people will change. And I think this is one of my life goal, I think, to change the perspective of people. Just a short story, because I don't want to take too much time. I remember when I was doing my residency, so some patient was sent to floor number 7 to ENT department looking for Dr. Gete. So I'm sitting in my room, where the doctor accepts the patients, and the patient comes to the room and asks, I'm looking for Dr. Goethe. And, I'm sitting in my chair, in the doctor chair, with my uniform, with my tag name, and he asking, who is Dr. Goethe? And in that moment, I had two options. I can be a fan and say people are, and what I decided to do is I took my tag and told them, let's go together to find Dr. Goethe. And then I showed him the tag. Sorry, I'm Dr. Goethe. What's your problem? And then we start, with people. So I think we have like a lot of things to do in order to change people's mind. I think this is one of the privilege that I have in order being here at Mount Sinai. And I hope that after I finish my fellowship here, I'm able to return to Israel and to be a physician. And by the connection with people, I think we can change their thinking and their mind.
Very good. A question from Richard Levy, and this question is for Dr. Maklada. As most of the Druze live in Syria and Lebanon, you showed us some of the numbers there, how much displacement and physical harm have they suffered as a result of Assad's bombardment of those who oppose him and of the strife in Lebanon? Do some immigrate to Israel?
So it was, sorry, I forgot that. So it was pretty much because, let's say in the 17th century, we immigrated, right? Like, I'm not sure about all the history, but yes, I knew otherwise they will not decide to be immigrated that time. But it was there, let's say, a lot of wars. And usually the Druze there won all the wars. But still, like all the Ottoman Empire and all the many other, like in the history. But so just because of these many wars, despite they won, actually they decided just to have more safe place for us.
So is there, are you aware of whether there is immigration more recently to Israel of Druze from?
No, so to Israel,
other...
it's forbidden thing, like to immigrate to Israel. If they immigrate today, so they are immigrate to Canada, to America, to Australia.
Of course, yeah.
But it's forbidden thing, like to come to Israel.
From certain countries.
Yeah, from Lebanon and Syria.
Got it. A question for Dr. Goethe from Difad Jakubowicz. How were you and your family received when you went back to your village? You shared some photos with us, of course, of your family visiting back in Ethiopia. How were you received?
First of all, I was amazed because I saw the kids running in my village, and then I look myself and see myself in them, and trying to understand, the differences between them and I, and understanding that if I was not making Aliyah to Israel, how my life will develop. So it was like amazing. That's one thing. Another thing that in the minute I open my mouth, even though I speak Amharic and everything, they recognize that I'm not from there. They say you are probably Beta Israel. Yeah, you come to visit your village, so they recognize us. And the amazing thing was that my father, he met some friend of him, back. We went after 20 years in Israel, so he met some of his old friends, and it was amazing to see even the differences, to see how this like life-changing moment. And I think that my father usually used to say that how our life was in Ethiopia, and there was those things, and tell about a lot of nostalgia about the life in Ethiopia. And then when we actually landed there and walked to the places and to our house, it was for him. He said maybe my nostalgia was not correctly as I was trying to see it. So it was amazing and unbelievable. And also in 2011, the life looks like, you are in Israel. It's coming from, 4 hours before the flight, I was like playing with my cell phone and everything. And now I'm coming to a place where there is no even electricity. So it was like
Right.
experiences to see it.
Right, that's amazing. Speaking of nostalgia, let's take a little walk down memory lane to when you both graduated, and what that moment was like for you and for your families. Dr. Maklada, maybe you can get us started on this one.
Yeah. So back to 2014, actually, my sisters came to visit me in my graduation. It was an amazing moment, very emotional, especially to my parents. Like, finally, we have a doctor in the family. And I did that. I was so happy and satisfied because I fulfilled my parents' dream.
Yeah.
And then I told him, okay, you didn't have the possibility or the opportunity to study, but then like you put all your effort on me. So now this is your, let's say, present, or the present to you. So this was the happiest moment for me.
Yeah, I'll bet. But how did you celebrate that day?
Oh, let me remember.
Yeah, that's really taking a walk down memory lane, isn't it?
We just were there, me and my sisters. We went to a restaurant. I remember. Yeah, it was something very, very close, only with my sisters, but wasn't a big celebration.
Right.
And actually, when I went back Israel, so in our traditions, they wanted to make for me, let's say, big celebration and to invite all the village. And I said no, because this is my own success. I know, okay, it will be advantage or something good to the community to be proud of, but this is my own success. And the only people who were responsible on my success is my parents and my close family. So because of this reason, I decided just not to do any celebration in the village.
Right. Okay. Got it. And
Yeah.
and just before I ask Dr. Gete about it, what about your sisters? Did they follow in your footsteps at all? Was that something that they ended up doing?
So do you know, today, the new generation, it's a little bit difficult. I told them, you will have the full support from me and from my parents. Do you want to go to study medicine? And they said, no, we are not interested. And then, like, for me, it's important not to force them, like, to study something that they don't like, because in every, let's say, bad moment, they will regret and just, run away. So I told them, just do whatever you like, and that's it.
Yeah, and I guess
Like,
everyone...
my wish was to, to have my sisters also physicians, but if they don't like, I totally respect that.
Yeah, fair enough. Dr. Gete, tell us about the moment that you graduated. Who was there and what was that moment like?
So in my graduation, so in Ben-Gurion University, there is a big ceremony, and the whole family came to Ben-Gurion University, and there is a big ceremony with a funny hat and everything. But what I did that the moment I saw my parents, I just got the diploma and just gave it them my diploma, because I wanted to deliver the message that says all your efforts is worth something. And this is thanks to you. You brought me from Ethiopia to look from other culture to Israel, and this is the moment I just gave them the diploma. And the next step that was happened with the happiness of my family and my brothers And my father called all his relatives to say that my son, the little one that has the ear problem, he's no doctor. The next step was that my father took me and he told me, as I mentioned, he was a traditional healer. He told me what are the important principles where now that you finish your medical school and you want to treat patients, what are the important principles? And first, and the most important was, it's open your ears and listen to them. They're not only tell you what it's not their only hand, but maybe they have other problem, and always open your ears. So this is what I remember from the association. And also, you know, the funny hat, and the kids were really so happy about that. We already have like 3 kids, I think. I don't know.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So you were already a father yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
That I have to say, that's great advice from your dad to listen. It's very universal. And speaking about your dad for a moment, we have a question here from Dalia and Farouk Hakimi. They asked, did Dr. Gete also study herbal remedies due to his father's training?
So, I didn't have the opportunity to do that, but and I'm planning. I don't know when it will happen, but I think the principles, and your approach to patients, I think it's the same. And you know, all the equipment that my father used to have are not exist in Israel, so we have some obstacle here. But I think this is something that even in our modern ability to treat people, what our parents and their wisdom still have to keep be used, because they have their own way of treating things. And I think that with all my profession, I think this is something that I'm taking with me also.
Right, right. I'm very curious too, a question for both of you, and maybe Dr. Maklada, you can begin on this one. In terms of your life experience, how has it made you a better doctor, do you think?
Wow. So, important question. I think to work every day and see patients, very difficult patients, made me appreciate my life more. Like every day we wake up and like we see, we listen, we talk, we eat, like we have hands, right? And we should appreciate that, because like I see patients with tumors, I see patients like with lost vision, lose the ability to talk, or sudden amputation. And then I say, oh my God, like we should thank God every day, not because of like the big things, only because we are alive and we have our like organs, and that we have our sense, and we have our like mentally we are okay, because maybe because of the many things that I see, I just say thank you, like thanks God. I appreciate my life for sure, just because what I see every day.
Yeah. And Dr. Gete, how about yourself? How is your life experience, you know, looking back to your childhood and, you know, your teenage years, going to university? How has that life experience impacted what makes you a good doctor?
I think in 2 things. First, I think that when you see a patient that suffers and you give some relief to that, I think that the appreciation that you got from the patients, I think it really affects you, and you understand that the most powerful things that you have is to relieve a bit pain that exists in other people. I think this is like a gift that we accept as physicians, even though the job is very hard, a lot of hours. and my wife and kids, none of them wants to be a physician. None of my kids want to be a physician because they all the time complain that I'm never at home. So, but I think this is something that really fulfill me. I think this is one aspect. And the other one, I think that my background, starting from zero and all the gaps that I had to complete. And in order to achieve my goal, I think this makes you a strong person in order to be able to deal with tough situation, and also all the time to think about solution, how we can find solution for this patient problem and how we can make it better. Never give up. I think this is something that we understand. And then I think it's make you eventually better doctor when you're able to listen, when you are willing to work hard in order to make someone else's life better. I think those are the principles that you get from life and your life experience.
Well, Dr. Gente and Dr. Maklada, I think you're both making this world a much better place just by being who you are. Thank you both so much for spending time with us this evening and for sharing your touching and inspiring stories. It's been great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now, before we say goodnight, I would like to share a few details of a few upcoming BGU Canada live and in-person events that are taking place in the coming months. The Ben-Gurion Gala Dinner for Sustainability and Climate Change will be held June 9th in Vancouver's Fairmont Pacific Rim. The gala will honor RBC BC Region President Martin Thibodeau. BGU Canada in Montreal will be holding the Montreal main event, our next 50, on June 14th. It will feature an evening with Cantor Gideon Zellermeyer. Money both events will go directly to the School of Sustainability and Climate Change at BGU. Also happening on June 14th in Winnipeg, an evening to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the 1972 Munich Olympic massacre that took the lives of 11 Israeli athletes. Tickets are now on sale and they're going fast. Plus in Toronto, the Future Is Now Gala featuring Michael J. Fox will take place on Sunday, November 6th. All sponsorships at all levels include a cocktail dinner pre-reception with an interactive experience involving BGU researchers from the Medical Simulation Building and a post-event dessert reception. To learn more about all four events, please head to our website, www.bengurion.ca. I would like to take a moment to thank the executive members of the Canadian branch of the International Federation of the IMA. And a big thanks also goes out to our team at BGU Canada. Thanks again for joining us this evening. And please remember to register for our next webinar, which will be held this coming Monday, April 11th at 12 noon Eastern Time, 11 Central Time, and 9 a.m. Pacific Time. Until then, be safe and thank you.